Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk. Must be Tuesday night, 6:30 Central Time. Let's go live and have a little conversation. Talk about ponds and lakes and fish and stuff having to do with what you want to do with your precious bodies of water. We have 0 viewers, 0 comments. Oh, wait, there's 2 viewers. Have no idea who's there. But hey, come on, chime in. Let me have some questions. I thought I'd start the talk with some talk about genetics. Hello, Deborah Corlew. I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad somebody's watching this. We got 5 viewers. Virgil Meyer, he knows the deal. Jeremy Day, Bill Shrum. Hey, here's the game. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like. Share this to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. Hey, Gil Cannonberg, dude, I'm so glad you're hanging out with us tonight. Todd Austin, he knows the deal. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. I'm going to talk about genetics here in just a minute. Virgil Meyer from Iowa. Bill Shrum from North Central Oklahoma. You guys, I'm so glad you're here. Glad to have. I was talking about I was going to have a birthday party, but I don't want to have a birthday party. Hello, John Dyer, hanging out from the Carolinas. Dave Weber, in the land of, up from northeastern part, from northeast of Kansas City. Hey, you know what, Dave Weber, you need to send me an email, boblusk@outlook.com. We're going to be talking. Jim Allen is RV in Florida. We got a pretty cool thing we're working on there, Jim Allen. Maybe we should tell people, maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. We'll let the mystery live before us. I thought I'd talk about genetics. So I'm working on a very, very cool project, and it stands to be one of my top 5 things I've ever done. It'll be tough to beat the top 2. Savannah in upstate New York and Richmond Mill Lake in North Carolina are head and shoulders above the best 2 things I've ever done. But this lake and this landowner over near Hyco, Texas, which is like an hour from me, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to study the genetics of the fishery. So as I'm digging into the gene pool and try to begin to learn about how genetics work, I have formulated an opinion. And so I do want you guys to chime in. Gil says I always learn something from these podcasts because of the questions you guys ask. Ron Krisman, the smallmouth bass man of America. Smallmouth bass love Ron Krisman. Ron Krisman loves smallmouth bass. So, genetics. Here's the way I try to think about this. I talk to people and I say, you know what? If you took the best, the grand champion black Labrador Retriever, and you bred him with the female bitch, it's a biological term, grand champion, and you have a litter of puppies, and there's 8 puppies. And those of you who have been around dogs understand how this works. Hello, Danny Mack from San Antonio. So you get 8 puppies. How many of them are going to be great? Even though they've got the genetics to be fantastic, the odds are really, really low that any of those 8 puppies are going to be great. Because there's external factors. You got to train them. They've got to be receptive. But I tell you one thing you can take to the bank. Out of those 8 puppies, how many are going to be runts? At least 1. So the way I look at genetics is even though a fish have the best genetics on the planet, that doesn't mean that their offspring are going to produce the biggest bass on the planet. So what we're learning is that there's a couple of companies out there, one in particular, that have figured out some of the top 15, 16, 17 genetic markers of largemouth bass trophy fish. And so I want to figure out how to study the genetics of fish to figure out how to give those fish the very, very, very best advantage. So here's my bottom line about genetics. Eric Collerman, that's pretty funny. Yep, all right. And Bill Shrum, he's got it. He knows, he sees the deal. Holy cow, you guys are already pitching questions. I'm so happy you're doing that. You're going to make my evening easier. Milk. And there's probably something in it, but I don't know what it is. And I do have a Yeti cup full of water and ice. So when we take the very best genetics of largemouth bass, for example, and we put them into an existing lake with that food chain, that water chemistry, that water quality, that habitat, what's going to happen? Who knows? So the way I like to look at this, it makes good sense to me, is let's say we have let's say just by chance, in this lake we're studying, odds are high that there's some 12-pound bass that have the genetic propensity for bass larger than 12 pounds, like 15 or 16 pounds. So here's where I'm going. So we get a fantastic male bass crossing with this fantastic female bass, and she has 100,000 babies. Well, half of them you can throw in the trash because they're boys. They're not going to get very big. So that other 100,000, there's 50,000 that have the genetic propensity. And out of that 50,000, how many of them have the aggressive nature, have the plasticity, you've heard me talk about that before, to fit into that environment in that food chain with that chemistry, and then have the opportunity to grow huge? Not many. And then you throw in the fact that there are thousands, and in this particular lake I'm thinking about, there are thousands of channel catfish, thousands of crappie, thousands of bass, thousands of bluegill that can eat those baby bass. So that totally skews the odds. The odds of you or I getting struck by lightning are higher than or better than the odds of a bass in a lake like that getting to be 16 or 17 pounds. So here's the bottom line. Genetics is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the end all to gain all. It is just part of the equation that you need to have a chance to grow the best fish on the planet. For example, Lake Fork in Texas still holds the lake record, or the state record, largemouth bass, 18.18 pounds. Barry St. Clair, farmer who got rained out of the field that day, bought some crappie minnows, went fishing in Lake Fork, 45 feet deep, with a 6 pound per thousand golden shiner trying to catch a crappie, and he breaks the state record. 1992. What? 33 years ago, that record was set. Hasn't been broken since. So, why not? So, genetics don't play the only role. There's environment, there's food chain, there's water chemistry, there's the right kind of habitat. Wait, are we going somewhere here? Holy cow. Bill Shrum knows where we're going. So does John Dyer. Dave Weber knows. Danny Mack knows. Happy water, great habitat, best food chain, genetics are fourth, and then a harvest plan. And if you don't have the harvest plan, what you're doing is you're taking away the opportunity for the best of the best to beat the rest. The best of the best to beat the rest. Y'all need to write that down. That's meat. So, you guys are typing up some stuff. The Land of Oz, Dave Weber, Missouri. Okay, I'm backing up. Hey, Gil, I see you. All right, let me back up here. I'm going to look at all these different things here. And I'm so glad Deborah Corley was the first one to chime in. She's a big fan, and you know what? I'm a big fan of Deborah Corley. So here we go. Joe Dutner. I don't know where Josh Milchewski is. Milchewski. Hope he's watching. Still haven't figured out how to pronounce it. He needs to see the next issue of Pond Boss. It's pretty big. Have a 1 acre pond. It's iced over now. Would it be a good idea to spread some barley bales around for control of algae in the spring? You know, that's a great question. That's a very thoughtful question. So I'm going to answer it like this. The reason to treat algae is because it exists. If it exists, then you treat it. So, Joe, I'm going to give you this answer. If that pond has a propensity to grow algae at ice off, then add some barley straw. You want to add, and the way I would do that is I would break up the barley straw, the barley bales, into clumps in shallow water, so that way when the ice melts, it can fall in it. Or one of the things to do about barley bales is you can put them in netting. I'm trying to think of the best way to do that. There, you can buy 1 by 2 inch plastic type netting. You can put those barley bales or barley straw in it, and then put those in the areas where you have algae growing. That way you can pull the plastic out later. So that's not a bad idea. I'm not sure it's the best idea, but the answer to your question is yes, you can. Dave Weber, I need to send you some photos of the pond I had built this last fall. When a guy with a passion for habitat hires a bulldozer, thinks he can get a bid industry. Send them on, dude. I'll share those on Facebook or whatever I got. Yep. Hey, John Henry Good. Yep. And Shrum Farm. Bill Shrum. Probably not. Talking about going back to the black labs. Yeah. Probably none of them are going to be champions. You have the best genetics on the planet. Odds are high that none of those dogs are going to be champions. And you absolutely know there's going to be a run. Eric Collerman, I signed up for the cheaper than a Friday night date subscription a few weeks back. Attaboy. Virgil, how did you know that? You must have done this. This is called Select Club. I did not buy it. It was gifted to me. Select Club. Bourbon cream. Yep. And with pecan. There's some kind of pecan in it or something. Attaboy, Virgil. Eric Collerman, I signed up for the cheaper than a Friday night date subscription a few weeks back. Hey, $35 a year. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. So here is the January-February issue. Still in the plastic bag. So I am just so cocky as to keep the ones that are sent to me in the plastic bag, thinking that someday when I'm gone, that these might have some value, and Debbie might want to have Christmas or something. Hell, I don't know. Dave Weber, milk is good. Water, here's water. Water. Cleanses my tongue. Jeremy Day, I have tons of Yopon holly that I need to get rid of. Can I sink it in the pond as bundles? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. R.E. Thompson, hey Bob, did you send out the aerator article to those who signed up? I signed up but didn't get anything. Okay, well, R.E., you just had a birthday. You're 84. Your memory is way better than mine because I'm sitting here trying to remember what I promised to send out about an aerator article. Oh, wait, I know what it was. I promised to write an aeration article in Pond Boss. That's what I did. I need to make myself a note here. You guys bear with me a minute. I need to email myself. Hold on. I got my phone here. Email Bob Lusk at outlook.com. Article. I'll put an article in the notes. Write an aeration article. Yeah. All right. So I just sent myself a message. Hey, R.E. Thompson, 84, that does more than anybody on the planet. I can't. This dude, hey, you guys need to look him up. I mean, he rebuilds motorcycles. He manages ponds. He mows grass. He takes care of people that have substance abuse issues. He's active in his church. He's married. He's been married for 348 years or something. It's ridiculous. This guy is a classic freaking overachiever. I will write an article in the March-April issue. I'm working on that right now. And I had told you I would do that. I didn't forget. Wink, 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 wink. But I will write an article. Can you treat bass eggs with hormones to get more percentage of females? I have never tried to fool Mother Nature. I remember a commercial, Jim Allen. What was it? It was for margarine or something. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. I don't know if you can treat bass eggs with hormones, but I know this. Hey, here's a cool story. I was on an airplane flying to, I think I was flying to Richmond Mill Lake. I might have been going to upstate New York. This is like 2004, 5, 6, 7, through there somewhere. And I was sitting beside a guy, and it's pretty easy, for you guys that fly a lot, it's kind of easy to strike up a conversation with your neighbor. And this guy asked him what I did, and I told him, and asked him what he did. He told me. Then he said, my wife is a fisheries biologist, and she is studying some tributaries of the Chesapeake Bay. And I said, really, what's she looking at? He said, well, there's a number of fishing guides on some of these tributaries, these rivers and streams that flow into the Chesapeake Bay, where they were catching way more female smallmouth bass than they should have. And so she started looking into that, and the ratio of female smallmouth bass in these tributaries was skewed. There was a way, way, way more female smallmouth bass than male bass. So as she started digging into it, she found out that there was a significant amount of estrogen in the water. And I said, okay, so how does that happen? He said, well, what she learned was there are so many water treatment plants and so many women on birth control pills that there was so much estrogen coming in, and estradiol coming in to the water, that when the smallmouth bass were spawning in those tributaries, that the ratio of females to males was skewed. So to answer Jim Allen's question, it makes me, if I were a conspiracy theorist, I would wonder if the amount of estrogen, the amount of estradiol in our water has impacted the way that works. Peyton, great question. That's a good question. So when you stock F1 tiger bass, largemouth bass, they'll spawn. So an F1 tiger bass has a 50% ratio of northerns to Floridas. So if you start looking at the math on that and you cross two F1s, then you're going to have some of their offspring that are 25% Floridas, 25% northerns, 50% northerns, 50% Floridas, and on up that chain. So the species that begins to shine through down the road, I believe that is dialed in or focused on the environmental circumstances of that particular pond or that lake. So if it's got the habitat and the happy water and the food chain to support those F1s, or 75% northerns, 25% Floridas, or 70%, 75%, Florida's 25%, Northern's, or 50-50, then that's when it's going to typically evolve. So it's completely dependent on all those external factors. So does the water allow it? Does the habitat allow it? Does the climate allow it? So Peyton, where you are around Shreveport, Louisiana, all you need is one harsh winter like 2021 to completely skew those results. So how old would an 18-pound bass be? Eric Collerman says its weight is the weight in age. The weight in age is not linear, but it's logarithmic. So the curve is more like this than it is that. Not so much that as it is this. So an 18-pound bass that's had everything it needs every day of its life is probably 13 or 14 years old in a lifespan of 14 to 15 years. So an 18-pound bass is within 2 years of the end of its life. You know, the world record bass, 22 pounds and whatever ounces, from Georgia, that bass was on the very back side of its life. Dave Weber needs more education on the harvest plan. Okay, let's tackle that. I can take up some time on that right there. Hey, Deborah. There it is right there. There it is. Whoop! Yep, I'm going to tell you about something here in a minute. I got to do something very, very cool. I so love my life. I lead the very coolest life. It may not be as cool as yours, but I'm not far behind you. Okay, so Dave Weber, you need more education on the harvest plan. It's 6:52. Let's take a minute and do a little commercial. David Schneiderman. Hey, David, I'm calling you out first, dog. Easy Docks of Texas. David's getting ready to work on a program for a 104-acre lake that I'm working on. It's a floodplain reservoir that has a tendency to raise 20 feet. So how do you get a floating dock and manage it on a lake that rises and falls 20 feet? Now, when that lake rises 20 feet, that might happen once every 15 years, 18 years, 20 years. But when it happens, how do you manage that? So do you have that lake rise up on pipes? So you got these 20-foot tall pipes? Or is it cabled down? You know, how does that work? So David has got a pretty good little thing to figure out there. Purina Mills. I've been working with Purina Mills now, this is 2025, 30 years. And one of the things I love about Purina, there's several things I love about them, several things I love less. What I love about Purina Mills is that they have been happy and willing to work with me to develop the best fish foods for what it is that you want to do. So I'm a huge fan of Purina Mills fish food. Distribution, not as much. You know, they look at fish foods kind of like a stepchild. You know, it bounces around through different departments out there. But I'm going to tell you this. I have grown some giant fish on Purina's Aqua Max Sport Fish Feeds. They've got great feeds. Texas Hunter products. Outstanding feeders. And not only do they have great feeders, they've got great customer service. You know, I can send Cody or Chris Blood. Chris Blood typically checks in. He may have, and I just haven't got to him yet. But those guys, they truly love their customers. Which, how many companies do that nowadays? I mean, do you feel like you're a friend with any of these companies? When you buy a feeder from Texas Hunter, you become friends with Texas Hunter. And you can send them an email, give them a call. Something's going on. Wayne Lancaster, if Wayne's watching here, his feeders were flooded last spring. I mean, like when I say flooded, inundated. And I let the guys at Texas Hunter know that Wayne's feeders were underwater at that point. And Cody emailed me right back. He says, "Hey, just let us know what we need to do." And so the water receded. Wayne's buddies from the fire department, the Iredale Volunteer Fire Department, went out there, helped him pull his feeders out, got all the crappy feed out that had just gotten soaked, all that Purina Aquamax MVP. The feeder dried out, and guess what? Everything worked. Even the electronic timer underwater still worked. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. BirdDogIt.com. Y'all check that out. Just go to BirdDogIt. I'm missing somebody, but I don't know who it is. Jim Allen, is there a pondology? Yes, there is a pondology Facebook page. The Institute of Higher Pondology. We got one of those coming up in May, guys. So, and now Jim Allen has been there. He spoke there. And Jim is going to help do some aging studies of some fish. And, one of the things I want to tell you guys is we need some intel. We need some scales from largemouth bass so we can start aging some fish that are 4, 5, 6 years old or older. You guys might be able to help with that. Jeremy Day can't, but you know what? Our buddies from up there in Iowa might be able to help with that. So, yes, there is a pondology Facebook page. I'm a little embarrassed to tell you, I don't remember what it is. But I know there is one. Okay, let's see here. Where are we going? Deborah, I'm so glad you know how to bet. Hey, there's Tommy Welsh. Tommy Welsh. Let me tell you about Tommy Welsh. I've never met him. I hope to one of these days. I think Tommy, you're from Kentucky. And he is a tattoo artist. I've seen some of I don't have a tattoo on my body. I kind of want to, but I've met a lot of people with art. And Tommy Welsh, he does that. Which one of these days we're going to talk, dude. All right, let's see here. Yes, Jim Allen, there is a Pondology Facebook page. There's a Pondology alumni Facebook page. Jeremy Day, I have a creek that runs near my lake, and I'm seeing lots of wood ducks hanging out. I want to track more next year. There's a great place around the creek. Oh, man, I'm starting to yawn. There is a great place around the creek that floods that I can dam up and use a pump to flood or drain it in the summer. What seed would you plant? I'm thinking Japanese. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm not a bird dude, but I'm going to tell you this. It's way important to have wood duck boxes than it is for something for them to eat. If you've got wood duck boxes, and here's the way that works. So wood duck box, buy a wood duck box because it's got the right size hole. If the hole's too big, too small, it's not going to work. Man, I must be thinking of Fred Bingaman. I'm getting sleepy. I know he's sleepy. So the thing about wood ducks is they really need a place where they can reproduce, where the baby ducks, when they hatch, can climb up a ladder, jump out, and mama duck can go find them a place to hide. So if you want to try to grow Japanese millet or wild rice, those are both good plants. But I'm not so sure that wood ducks have to have that. They really need the boxes where they can reproduce. So if they can reproduce, you're going to get a lot more wood ducks. That's way, way, way more important than what they have to eat. Trenton Evans, I have a pH with a rating of 10.8. Ooh, dang. That's pretty high, buddy. I've used several digital meters and all read the same. What can I do to get the pH down? Hey, plan on putting in calcis that will not help drop the pH. Okay, so Trenton, if you got a pH rating of 10.8 and you've used several digital meters, I'll tell you what I would do. I would go to the Texas A&M University's Soil Sciences Department's website and find there's water testing lab and look at the $40 test. And if you will collect a sample based on exactly what they're telling you and send that in, and have them analyze it from an independent lab, my gut reaction is that your meter's wrong. If you're using several digital meters, my gut reaction of those are wrong. And if you will email me the results, so if you'll send in a water sample to the Texas A&M Soil Sciences lab, and then have them copy me on the results, I'll interpret those results with you, and then we'll talk about what to do. Calcis is limestone. It's calcium carbonate that's actually designed to raise the pH up to whatever calcis is. So adding it is not going to reduce your pH. I don't know what that is. Pop the lid off this and eat a piece of ice. Trenton, my advice is I don't think that test result is right. Follow up on that and get some more. Oh, look at there. Bill Shrum said, there it is. Hey, Jason Dodd from Wichita, Kansas. Year or two coming up since initial snocking of smallmouth bass and largemouth bass. What are the odds that the smallmouth will get a spawn off, or have the LMB they've already asserted their dominance. They have already asserted their dominance. They have. So that doesn't mean smallmouth won't spawn. RE, but you said you would email the sign up. Yeah, you know what? I did say that and I forgot. So here we are. I will go back and dig that up because I do remember doing that. Because, shoosh. I'm not going to use the excuse of my age because, dude, you're freaking way older than I am. I'm not going to lean on that deal. But I will email the. You know what? I do remember. I told you I'd write the article, send it to you guys, and let you add something to it. And I just now, today, actually, yesterday, I started organizing the next issue of Pond Boss. So I'm working on the next issue of Pond Boss right now. And I'm a little bit behind. But, RE, okay, dude, I love the fact that you're holding me accountable. So I will remember to do that now that you helped me remember to do that. Virgil Meyer, how do I best think about adding the put and take species like walleye, smallmouth bass, and my pond with success? The purchased smallmouth bass have been elusive. Okay, how do I best think about adding? Well, I'll tell you this, Virgil. If your catch rates are low, and let's see, has it been 3 years? It's been 3 years since your lake was stocked. It may be time to do an electrofishing survey so you can really get a good idea as to what's going on in that lake. Why don't you know what? I don't know how to say this other than I'm busier than I want to be, but everything I do is fun. Email me. Gosh dang it. I don't really like putting this on other people, but I'm going to do that. Remind me to look up the records on when your lake was stocked, Virgil, because what I'm thinking with you, think about adding, when you want to add the put and take species, you kind of got to base that on what you're catching and what their relative weights are. So if you do have walleye and smallmouth bass, but your catch rates are low, then it's a good idea to do an electrofishing survey sometime this spring and compare that and take a look at what the numbers of fish that you have. Then you can decide if you want to ask more. Eric Collerman. Holy cow, I'm getting behind. heard Luke Bryan on a podcast talking about building a female. Okay, so Luke Bryan's pond management guy called me a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, Troy Goldsby, and he didn't know much about female bass only, and Luke Bryan was asking him about that. So he and I had a conversation. So what he decided to do with Luke Bryan was to stock some female bass. How would that even be possible after the first spawn of female and male fry would be assumed? Well, because what they did there, Eric, was they only stocked female largemouth bass of known genetics. So what Troy did with Luke is to go find a source of bass to where he had a mix of genetics where they were able to successfully sex the fish, where he only stocked females. There were no males. So there was no reproduction at all. And so the way that worked is that now Luke has only got female largemouth bass. So he's got some really big bass, but the problem with that is you got to continually add fish to that system to mimic what nature would be doing if the fish were reproducing. Woo. So that's the way that's worked. There's Ron Ardoin from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Okay, so Robert, how much hydrated lime does it take per acre foot to raise the pH to 11 so we can have a fish kill and renovate the lake? Well, Robert, that kind of depends on what the pH is, what your alkalinity is. So if you're going to use hydrated lime to try to kill fish, hydrated lime is calcium hydroxide, which can really push the pH up high and kill fish. The follow-up problem to that is how do you get the pH down? So I don't know what the acre foot number is. It's probably 200 to 300 pounds per acre foot, depending on what's already in the water. So you really need to do water chemistry analysis to find that out. Hello, John Sharmus. We have a quarter acre pond in Kansas with a southern night explosion last year. We know this product in Palm Moss called Muck Fighter. What are your Muck Fighter does nothing to kill existing plants. What Muck Fighter does is it helps break down the organic matter that's in the mud. So if you've got southern naiad in a quarter acre pond, then you could probably buy a rake and pull a bunch of that stuff out because it's not that much. Ron says, I need a tattoo of a carp. Yeah, like right across my forehead, right? Steve Thorburn, how do we increase minnow populations? Red shiners, golden shiners, blunt nose, and gams. Well, the way to do that is to minimize predation. So if you want to increase minnow numbers, then you've got to be able to have the habitat where they can reproduce, got to have the food chain that supports them, and then you got to minimize the fish that eat them, which I said all that in about 30 seconds, and it probably will take you 2 years to figure that out. Jeremy Day has got 4 wood duck boxes currently. Maybe invest in more there. Cool birds. Yep, there you go. If you're going to do a water sample, what time of day is best? 4 o'clock. I just made that up. You know what? If you're going to do a water sample, what time of day is best? 4 o'clock. John Dyer, he needs... Rod needs a boudin tattoo. Yeah, you know what, Jim Allen is a scientist. The pH test, make sure your calibration reference sample is right. And that is the truth. That's why I'm skeptical about that pH test. I really, really doubt that water test is correct. I can't imagine that's right. John Dyer, what is your thought process for creating an issue of Palm Moss Magazine? You know what? I'm going to come back to that. That's actually a pretty good question because you guys have no idea the thought process to create an issue of Pond Boss. Chuck Brinkman, Elena, Elena's over there. Chuck Brinkman and his bride are raising their girls the way that people should be raised over there west of St. Louis. All right, most of the ice is off the pond, and I caught a bluegill yesterday. It was pretty skinny, but the fish are eating the MVP. Well, you know what? If they're eating, man, I'd keep feeding them. And that bluegill, so Elena, let me tell you what's going on there. If you caught a bluegill that's pretty skinny, that bluegill is probably old. It's probably like somebody's great grandfather. It's kind of getting up there in years. It's losing weight. It's already been the best it's going to be. So it's geriatric. Look that word up and take it to school tomorrow. Ron Ardoin, could you slowly add alum to decrease the pH? No. Alum is calcium sulfate. Lime is calcium carbonate. So calcium sulfate is not necessarily going to lower the pH. And so if the pH, so here's where I'm going on that. I'm pretty convinced that pH reading is not correct. That's where I'm going. So like what Jim Allen alluded to is the meter was not calibrated according to a standard. So if the unit, the meter is calibrated properly, then you're going to get a good reading. If it's not, then you're not. So that's why I'm saying, bundle up a sample and send it up to the lab, and then you'll know. I want to go back to John Dyer's question. What is your thought process for creating an issue? I'll tell you exactly what it is. Most magazines have an editorial calendar that goes out at least a year. I don't do that. I don't do that at all. I don't even plan my life out much farther than 2 weeks. I know we're going to have an Institute of Higher Pondology coming up in May. I promise you, I will not be thinking about that until we get to the 1st of May. And then I'm going to base it on who's coming. So depending on who's coming, I will think about it. And I do the same thing with Pond Boss Magazine. So the issue I'm working on right now is the March-April issue. So I have a number of writers. I've got Mark Cornwell, his wife Christine, Wes Neal, Eric West. I've got like 6 or 8 writers. Mike Otto, Michael Gray. Good gosh, the water expert. Birdman Mel. So I have and wildlife folks. Dan Van Skyke. So when those guys start sending me articles, and I tell them, write an article that's appropriate for the March-April issue. So I get all these articles in, then I start reading them. And my job is to edit those. Edit? I'm a fisheries biologist. I'm not a trained editor. But you know what? When I'm reading their words, I see things they don't see when they write it. So I've turned into a pretty good editor, even though I have no training in it. Over 21 years of doing it, you get better at it. So then what happens every single time is there's a theme for that issue. So then the articles that I need to write, I base them on the theme for that issue of the magazine. Dave Beasley sends something in. Wes Neal. When I start seeing the stuff that they're producing, then that gives me some incentive and some ideas as to what I need to write. Sometimes even when I get a recipe in, that triggers a thought for a dadgum article. So like this one, okay, talking to you guys now, RE busting my chops a little bit. Yes, I promised to write an article about aeration. And so here's the way I do that. I start going back. When I'm ready to do these things, I put everything in a box. I'll stick it in the box. Okay, now it's time to open the box. It's time to open the box to do the next issue of Pond Boss. So I'll raise the lid on the box. First thing I do is start going through all the emails that I've gotten over the last 2 months. And what'll happen is I start digging back through and oh crap, there's RE's email, and there's 2 or 3 other emails that people sent me that want to have some input in an article that they want me to write. So, oh crap, I need to write that article. So then I'll write the article and I'll send it to you guys, even though I forgot about it, although I did, and then you guys can give me your input, if you're responsive. If you're not responsive, I'm going to ignore you. Because when I hit deadline, it's time to go. And so then I'll take all this input and then I'll write that article and then send it to those that need to look at it. And then here we go. I will send it on. So that's kind of the way I do it. And then I pick the theme oftentimes based on some of what the writers are sending to me. Okay. I'll back up here because I'm kind of getting lost. All right. Could you slowly add alum to decrease the pH? You know what, Ron? If you add alum is aluminum sulfate. If you add it slowly, here's the way alum works in my experience. Is alum works to decrease the pH, but you gotta be really, really careful because it's on a curve like this. And then when you finally reach that tipping point right here, it'll go like that really, really fast. Bill Schrum, when should I start trying to trap bullheads? I'd start in the morning. What type of trap is best to have for the 10 to 18 inch bullheads? I would build a trap. I would build a cone-shaped trap. A cone shape. I would build a cylindrical trap with a cone in it where the opening of the cone is a little bit bigger than the bullheads you've got. So if the pH is truly high, what's the best method to lower it? Well, Ron, the way to lower pH is to use something that can trigger an acidic response. Aluminum sulfate can do that, but it is so volatile that you really, really, really need to know what you're doing to do that because when you have a high pH content, then that water's alkalinity is pretty high. And when the alkalinity is high, its buffering ability is high. But it's kind of like Rolaids or Alka-Seltzer or, Tums. When you consume the Alka-Seltzer, then the pH is going to shift fast. So as you're adding whatever acid there is, whether it's going to be aluminum sulfate or vinegar or whatever it is that you're choosing, you got to be real, real, real picky about that. Hello, Mark Hicks. Aluminum sulfate will lower pH, but you got to be really, really picky about that. John Harson, can you refresh me on the water test? Option 1, do the $40 one. Do the $40 test. Felt $40 well water test. Coming up on Virgil Myers, 1,800 perch, 150 smallmouth. You probably ought to add more smallmouth bass. Perch were caught early in the warm season, disappeared. They didn't disappear, they just quit biting. Walleye are doing fantastic in early warm season, recently nice fishing. Thinking walleye need a younger class, maybe a larger number. You know what? That does make sense. Concerned about predation for new stocking. Well, you know what? Let me give you a little confidence there, Virgil. You did a great job with your habitat. As goes the habitat, so goes what lives in it. And the fact that you added a whole lot of habitat, that's going to help your odds of success, your odds of survival. So I would sure look at that. I would go ahead and add some more. Adding more won't hurt you, but I would sure look at doing, now that you're in the 3 years, it's time to do an electrofishing survey. I might be able to scoot up there. I don't know. We ought to talk. Hey, Brad Metzner, how's my favorite veterinarian from South Central Missouri? On the Texas A&M forum, yep. Real Texas Outdoor makes a great bullhead trap. Well, there you go. There's a tip. Jim Allen, still think we could add walleye to lakes. Should we wait until the aquatic plants? I don't know that I would wait until aquatic plants return, Jim. So here's the way I see that. Walleye are cool water fish. So when your warm water fish are cold, they're not moving around as much. Walleye could be a pretty good choice to do, especially this time of year, if you want to add those to it. The thing about walleye is they have to have a certain kind of habitat to really thrive, which is tricky because not many people recognize the fact that walleye will move up into shallow water to feed just like a largemouth bass will. In where you are in Kentucky, you could probably buy some walleye fry. I start digging around looking at that. Get in touch with Kenny Sanderson. Kenny knows people. And odds are high he could get you some walleye fry that don't cost a huge amount of money. You know, you guys spend $400 and stock some walleye fry. And if they survive, you've hit a home run. If they don't, you spend about the same amount of money you'd spend taking the family out for dinner in a nice restaurant. Maybe twice. Mark Hicks, question, will gypsum powder lower a pH if it's too high? If I remember, isn't gypsum pH neutral? Gypsum is, no, it's not gypsum neutral. It's a little bit pH high. So gypsum is calcium sulfate. So it can't raise the pH any higher than it is. So depending on the kind of gypsum you get, the pH is probably going to be around 8 to 8.5. So it can't raise it more than that. But what gypsum can do is it can push the pH down with a chemical reaction that helps create sulfuric acid. Calcium sulfate reacts to create hydrogen sulfide or sulfuric acid. So yes, it can push the pH down a little bit. And as you can tell by my hesitancy, I'm not a chemist. I don't want to be a chemist. I want to raise fish. Okay, so look here, Bill Shrum. I bought the Z-Trap. The holes were too small. I made them larger, caught only 2 bullheads and about 100 sunfish. Well, that gives you an answer right there. Ian Swanger, good evening, Bob. Could you add trout to a pond when ice melts? Or would the water be too cold and shock them? No, you can add trout if you want to add trout. The thing about, here's the cool thing about water. When you have, when the ice melts, then the water temperature is probably in the 40s down, way down deep. So yeah, you can stock trout. Elena, quick question. My dad and I'm going to help you with your grammar here, baby. My dad and I were wondering about putting in some pumpkin seed in our little bluegill pond. If that's a good idea, when would be the best time to do it would be in April. So if you can find a source, then if you can find a source to buy some pumpkin seeds, which you should, up there west of St. Louis, Missouri, then I would do that in April. Put some pumpkin seeds in April. Trenton Evans, water test is ordered. Attaboy. Well, all right, guys. You know what? It is 7:24. We've made it through almost another hour hanging out, talking about ponds and lakes and fish and stuff. The Institute of Higher Pondology is coming up. Now, guys, some of you might be interested in this very cool project I'm working on. Email me if you'd like to be involved in studying genetics. Now, there's no money for you to be paid, and you know, I'm not going to charge anybody, but I'm working with a guy to collect a bunch of fish, to do a genetic study and an aging study. So if any of you are interested in showing up, it's about an hour from my house in Hyco, Texas, March 24 and 25. Bill Shrum, you might be interested in that. But you guys email me and let me know. And R.E. Thompson, birthday boy, you just turned 84 years old. That dude's 84. I don't know how you do everything you do. But I will be working on that article. So, I'm going to wrap this up. Bill Shrum, I've heard you say several times, don't call bass till after 30 years. That's true. Mine were stocked June of 2023. I went 2 inches. So for me, don't call until October 26th when they should be spawning. That's absolutely true. No culling. No culling. I know that's kind of it doesn't make sense, but yes it does. It makes total sense. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to look at the rest of these comments right quick. Elena, Jeremy, Virgil. How much of the pond? I think Ari might be saying how much is the pondology event. The pondology event is $1,500, and you need to get yourself here. So what that is, it's about 2.5 days of intense education, hands-on, tagging fish, electrofishing, classroom, hanging out with some of the coolest people on the planet. And I tell you this, if you're a student of ponds, the pondology event is well worth it. Jim Allen's been there. Good gosh, Bill Shrum has been there. John Dyer's done it. A bunch of the folks who are on this show have done it, and they will testify as to how good it is. It's certainly well worth it, I promise. It's worth it just to hang out with me. My wife didn't hear me say that, or she'd bust my chops. So, guys, if you want to know more about the Institute of Higher Pondology, send me an email, boblusk@outlook.com. In the next couple of days, I'm going to be working on the next issue of Pond Boss Magazine. So, RE, quit busting my chops, dog. I'll be sending it to you when I get that article written about aeration. So, between now and then, I always appreciate you guys hanging out. And I will say adios for now.